a hatchet-wielding psychopath?
She was great, but like I said before, I would never actually want to meet her.
That's why I said hag. I was like, she's probably a lot.
She's just passionate.
She's not wielding a hatchet, right? Or is she like legit?
The woman we're talking about today is not wielding a hatchet, but she's wielding assistant attorney general.
Period, sister.
All right. Hitting the credits now.
Let's go.
Because we've been recording for the past minute.
Oh.
Hit that music. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Day's Dumpster Fire. As ever, I am one of your hosts, Kara, and with me, like always, is Ed and Deja. How are you guys today?
Well, I'm freaking great today. Got my sister. I gave my sister my old phone. She cried in my arms about it out of happiness because she lost her phone in the ocean. So that was a good feeling. I was playing Captain Phone Saver. I almost said Captain Save-A-Ho, so we'll have to bleep that out.
We'll work on it.
Oh no, that's staying in.
Amazing.
Marco.
Yeah, so I had to play Superman. But it's okay. It was good. All good. Such a good time.
Yeah, no, this is it's been a wild 2 weeks, I think, for everybody. It's just
7-ish months, 8, 9 months has been pretty crazy.
It's been a ride. It's been a ride. That's okay. We're hanging in there. We're riding it out on this ride. So we're here for you all. And we're going to talk about Prohibition.
Yeah, not drinking for the next, month. Welcome to Kara's mind. After I just got back from a brewery, it's fine.
After I just made the loudest noise out of my body. And happy birthday to Kara.
Thank you very much. Look,
that is right. Yeah, because by the time you hear this, Kara will be, 2 weeks into your 33 years?
Yeah, I'll be a whopping 33 years old. Go me.
One of my favorite numbers.
Yeah.
One of my favorite people. Just wearing one of my favorite numbers for a year.
Thanks, friend. I
love that for you.
Appreciate that so much.
Yeah, I'm turning 43 this year, so I'm just getting older and crotchetier.
At least your birthday's at the end of the year. That is a crazy word, yeah. It's a good word, though.
Dude, ever since I turned 40, I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning sharp. Every freaking day, I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to pee.
Oh, I had 2 kids. That I get it. But I'm only 30, so...
Yeah.
I sneeze and I pee myself, but it's okay.
Right. On that note, should we talk about Prohibition?
Yeah.
Okay.
I prohibit peeing at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's all I care about.
Yeah, right.
Hey guys, don't make me laugh too hard. I'll pee myself.
So Deja, you and I, we got our depends on strong. Let's strap up and let's go.
Okay, the last time on the Day's Dumpster Fire. Lord.
Alrighty, Kara. Send us down the bunghole of the barrel. Let's go.
Boy, all right, bottom of the bottle. Last time on the Day's Dumpster Fire. Alcohol was deeply rooted in American life from the colonial period onward. Colonists relied on beer and cider, and by the early 1800s, the United States had thousands of distilleries and saloons. With alcohol consumption peaking around 1830, saloons became symbols of vice, and reformers, especially women, began organizing. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton pushed for women's voices in the movement, but the Civil War slowed progress. In the 1870s, the temperance movement revived with the Women's Crusades, where women prayed outside of saloons. This inspired the founding of the Women's Christian Temperance Union of 1874. Under Frances Willard, the WCTU grew into the nation's largest women's organization, linking temperance to broader reforms like suffrage and labor's rights. Carrie Nation kept the cause in the headlines with her hatchet-wielding saloon raids. At the same time, the Anti-Saloon League, founded in 1893, focused solely on prohibition and became a powerful political force. The alcohol industry pushed back. Brewers tied beer to immigrant identity and promoted it as wholesome, while distillers argued that liquor taxes funded the government. But divisions between brewers and distillers weakened their cause, while the dry movement remained unified. World War I tipped the balance. Anti-German sentiment targeted brewers. Grain was diverted for the war effort, and saloons were cast as unpatriotic. By 1917, nearly half of the states had already passed prohibition laws, and Congress moved to nationalize the issue with wartime restrictions. In 1919, the 18th Amendment was ratified, banning the manufacture, sale, and transport of intoxicating liquor. The Volstead Act, defining intoxicating as anything over 0.5% of alcohol, closed loopholes and set up enforcement with exceptions for medicine, religion, and industry. On January 17, 1920, national prohibition officially began. You're welcome. There's your recap.
You should like double speed that up so that it's like
Right? Yeah, like the last hour and a half long episode has just been recited
brought down in 2 minutes.
You're welcome.
Yeah, like 2 minutes.
That was it.
Good job.
So yes, we are now working on 2-minute episodes.
That's it.
Now.
I do highly recommend listening to the first part 1. There's more information there. It's great. But
yeah, no, you really got to listen to part 1, and you really got to focus on Carrie Nation, because that is a badass chick right there.
She's great. We love her.
She is.
We need her on a t-shirt.
Oh, don't start me. I know a person. My mom has a cricket.
See?
And she makes good t-shirts.
That's it. We'll make t-shirts.
Yeah, Carrie Nation is legit hardcore protesting at its best.
So today,
especially with a hatchet and a pool ball. Like,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, you don't mess with Carrie Nation. Now today we're gonna talk about another woman.
Carrie Nation.
We're not gonna mess with Carrie Nation. We're gonna talk about another woman today who has her fingers all up in prohibition. In fact, I'm gonna start this episode.
Fingers? Are we doing like a weird thing with the fingers?
No.
Is there gonna be a thing about fingers in this?
Spirit fingers.
Oh, okay. You just put a little emphasis on the fingers. I was like, did she throw her fingers into the crowd? What happened?
All right. So
okay,
part two, I'm going to call it the source, meaning the source of liquor. Where are we getting all of this alcohol from? I'm going to start it with a quote from Maybelle Walker Willenbrandt. She says, "Give me the authority and let me have my pick of 300 men, and I'll make this country as dry as it is humanly possible. There's one way it can be done. Get at the source of this supply. I know them, and I know how they can be cut off. I have no patience with this policy of going after the hip pocket and speakeasy cases. That's like trying to dry up the Atlantic Ocean with a blotter." I love her. She's great. This woman I would have lunch with, and we will get to her in just a second. But first,
well, it's interesting that she's like, let me have my pick of 300 men.
Yes, there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about it.
Because it's like, you can find 300 men that aren't like absolute douchebags.
You can. You just have to look for them, especially
really hard
when corruption is as high as it is in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Got to do some dig deepin'. Dig deepin' is crazy. I said that so wrong. Sorry, guys. I don't know if anyone heard that.
Chapter 6. Let's start with chapter 6.
It's too late for this.
It's fine. We're doing great. Chapter 6, Near Beer. 1920, a year full of major events. Women would gain the right to vote in August after the passage of the 19th Amendment. The League of Nations would be formed. It was announced that Babe Ruth would be traded to the Yankees from the Red Sox, beginning the curse of the Bambino. It would be a year of navigation through an ocean of wet and dry legal questions throughout the United States. On the morning of January 16th, 1920, in Norfolk, Virginia, a crowd of 10 to 15,000 people gathered at a wooden tabernacle built for Billy Sunday. The well-known preacher was holding a funeral procession that featured a 20-foot casket holding John Barleycorn, along with the sins and the diseases he carried with him. Beginning at the railroad station, the casket was removed from a train car carried through the streets of Norfolk by pallbearers, reportedly followed by a giant Satan, as the procession led to the stage of the tabernacle. Billy Sunday held a speech about the end of alcohol in America, explaining, quote, "Goodbye, John. You were God's worst enemy. You were hell's best friend. I hate you with a perfect hatred. I love to hate you." That's a direct quote from the New York Times in 1920.
That's hardcore.
Oh, yeah, that guy. 148 miles away, at the First Congressional Church in Washington, D.C., a place in which Frederick Douglass once attended, a special congressional meeting was held in celebration on the night of January 16th, 1920. In attendance were Wayne Wheeler, Andrew Volstead, and Anna A. Gordon of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. The crowd in the church were hushed and serious as they listened to the speakers in the night. At 11:15 p.m., just before midnight, William Jennings Bryan stepped up onto the podium. The famous orator spoke with fervor, making biblical references, comparing the wet movement trying to kill the 18th Amendment to Herod, who tried to kill baby Jesus. Bryan spoke Bryan spoke for 45 minutes, ending his sermon at midnight while the crowd cheered.
Wait, which one was the guy that was like spearheading the dry movement? Was that
politically? It was Wayne Wheeler.
Okay, yeah, Wayne Wheeler was the politician that was like, I don't care if you're left or right, if you're for a dry movement, you've got my vote.
Yeah, that was Wayne Wheeler, the head of the Anti-Saloon League.
Yeah, short guy, vest, glasses,
yep,
kind of nerdy.
That's it. The guy who would probably own a pocket protector.
Nice.
On the other side of the spectrum, distilleries and breweries were sold out of their inventories across the country as aristocrats, business owners, restaurants, and the average Joe who enjoyed an occasional drink stocked up as much as they could before the 18th Amendment went into effect. That includes the molasses incident in Boston.
Yes.
Even people who publicly supported the 18th Amendment stocked up with their own cellars, including John D. Rockefeller Jr., Woodrow Wilson, and Alfred P. Sloan, the future president of GM. The next morning.
Now, keep in mind, Rockefeller Jr. got eaten by cannibals in some years later.
Yeah, that's a different fire.
Different. His boat sank and he swam to shore and he thought that he was going to survive. Nobody found anything of him other than his bones and the fact that he was chopped up and eaten.
Yeah, that was a bad deal.
Yes, that's a dumpster fire for another day.
That's an episode for another day for sure.
Yes.
If you want to listen to any cannibalism episodes, though, check out the Donner Party.
Party. Yeah, the Donner Party. That's a barbecue and a half right there. Yeah. That's
my other big episode.
God. Oh, jeez. Yeah,
that was fun though. Anyway,
I couldn't eat meat after that for like weeks.
You're welcome.
He's like for like 2 hours until I started smoking some of the meat in my backyard.
Yes, yeah. Like I pulled my ribs off the barbecue, and I'm like, I can't. I'm a vegetarian. Like I'm just gonna eat snow.
The next morning, on January 17th, 1920, the nation woke up to a dry nation. Naturally, those who were supporters of the dry movement celebrated, and those who supported the wet movement were mournful. Saloons across the country closed their doors, distillers, wineries, and brewers shut down, or they looked for other means of income. Hundreds of thousands of people, mostly immigrants, lost their jobs in the months following January 17th. These included those who worked in breweries, distilleries, bottling factories, farmers, saloons, truckers, and hospitality workers. Some historians put the number of unemployed people directly affected by the implementation of Prohibition as high as 500,000 to 1 million people. That's a lot of people. After the mass loss of employment, people generally found other means of income. It wasn't like they were just left high and literally dry. They were kind of left dry, but they did find other means of employment. Some worked for brewers who were brewing alternative drinks. Some went to factories, some to restaurants, and some went to the black market, as we'll see. For the most part, though, in the early years of Prohibition, people did try to follow the law as best they could, finding alternative beverages and entertainment. The popularity of professional sporting events, while already on the rise, increased just that much further, especially baseball and boxing. In fact, baseball became America's pastime during this time period. Some historians argue that men would transition from saloons to stadiums after Prohibition went into effect. But there are other factors that contributed to the rise of pro sports, and they were in play. However, it can be argued that Prohibition just boosted it that much more. Welch's grape juice made record profits, marketing themselves as the perfect alternative to wine, which is smart. Smaller beer breweries went out of business. Larger ones were able to pivot to other beverages such as soft drinks like root beer, ginger ale, that kind of thing. Some made something called near beer, which we'll get to, and even ice cream. Anheuser-Busch made a Bevo. That's what the drink was called, Bevo, B-E-V-O. It was a malt drink that ended up selling about 5 million cases per year in the early 20s. Pabst sold near beer that contained 0.5 alcohol or less. So they were following the Volstead Act to a T, and it worked. They called it near beer. It's estimated that alcohol consumption declined about 30 to 40% between 1920 and 1925. But that doesn't mean that alcohol was entirely eliminated, much to the chagrin of Wayne Wheeler.
I feel like at this point, though, capitalists would be like, oh, if I can find a way to manufacture alcohol under the radar, then I can make a grip of money.
That is the entire theme of this episode.
Okay.
Yes, it's true. At 12:59 a.m. on January 17, 1920, an hour after Prohibition went into effect, 6 men armed with pistols stole $100,000 in 1920s money worth of medicinal whiskey from 2 freight train cars. This would be the first known offense in the Prohibition era that defied the Volstead Act. Others began immediately selling the stock they had purchased before at a premium price for anyone who was willing to buy it. So while in some ways Prohibition seemed to be working in the early days, in other ways it was exposing its weak spots that were getting ready to burst at the seams.
I like how it's medicinal whiskey.
Yeah, you like that? We'll get.
It's like, oh, hey, yeah, no, I got some medicinal crack cocaine, or here's some medicinal heroin, which is sad because it was considered medicinal at one point in time.
They
sure did.
Do
that was a thing.
That yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah,
also was
turn of the century, 1900s. Cocaine was like.
I mean, 2025, we still have Vicodin
and oxycodone and
Percocets. And
we can expand on
all
that
those things.
A little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
America, let's go.
All right. Chapter 7. The last word. Before the passage of the 18th Amendment, Senator Henry Cabot Lodge from Massachusetts, if you remember this from part 1, argued that enforcing the amendment would be next to impossible. Even with the addition of the Volstead Act in 1919, he would eventually be proven correct. In 1921, Warren G. Harding was elected president following Woodrow Wilson. In terms of prohibition, Harding was publicly in support of the movement. However, behind closed doors, Harding was very much a wet president. Famously, he stocked up a full bar in the White House, essentially replacing Wilson's alcohol with his own. Harding had also put in a few cabinet members with questionable intentions who would take advantage of him throughout his presidency, especially his Attorney General, Harry Dougherty. Dougherty would be knee-deep in scandals throughout his time in the cabinet, including being personal friends with the openly wet and corrupt officials that he decided to hire. According to the Times article, which I found and I thought was interesting, the cabinet enforcer-in-chief, written in 1930, many at the time believed that he would be the one to open the door to the Justice Department to prohibition corruption. More on Dougherty shortly, but first, the IRS, which probably seems like it's out of left field. You're welcome, taxes.
Well, in the IRS, I feel like that's gonna come back
and
again.
Next.
Because there's certain figures in this time period who've committed a lot of murders, but they could only bust them on the premise of tax evasion.
That will be not next episode, but the episode after that. Stick around.
My God, we still got 2 more episodes to go.
Oh, yes. This is a big topic. I wasn't kidding. It's a monster.
Holy crap. That's like half the year.
She said,
So
I am
many
putting in
hours
the
of research.
hours.
I love it, though. I've been having so much fun
Doing the
with it.
damn thing. I'm so happy
All
for
right.
you.
In general,
Let's go.
prohibition enforcement would be divided into 2 departments on the federal level. The Department of Treasury would be handling the enforcing part, and the Department of Justice would take care of the persecutions as the follow-up to the Treasury's enforcement efforts. Led by the IRS, which to me is interesting, the Department of Treasury began working on enforcement as soon as the Volstead Act was passed. Note, this was probably because either they didn't know where else to put the Prohibition Department, or they assumed that Prohibition and the taxes that were being lost or rewritten or whatever should be controlled by the IRS, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the department created a prohibition unit that was to oversee prohibition enforcement across the country and were provided funds from the government to get their act together. The funding? Well, it was enough for about 1,500 prohibition agents to cover 48 states. Mathematically, that's about 1 agent for every 70,666 American citizens.
Yeah, that's something that, like, because my grandfather was born in 1918, and he grew up in the 20s and the 30s, and he remembers Prohibition. And he remembers his dad talking about, like, how do you enforce
It's a whole
this?
thing, yeah. Enforcement's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's like trying to enforce a law in America where people can't wear socks. How in the world do you enforce a law where people can't wear socks?
1 in 70,000.
Yeah.
Amongst all
You
these
can't.
people.
Yeah,
Just
it's
overnight.
just and so, like, there were my grandfather remembers one prohibition agent coming into Elgin, Illinois, and he sat at the diner. Actually, ate at that same diner years ago. He ate some eggs and bacon and just moved on. Because there was nothing he could do. There was nothing that he could do individually to stop anything that was going on. So, like, from the outset, like, prohibition was unenforceable.
Well, let's keep getting into it because there's more.
And the fun continues. Let's go.
Not only was the prohibition unit grossly understaffed, but it was also underpaid. And they would take anybody and everybody who was willing to work for them. Prohibition agents had very little training or very poor training. Paired with the lack of background checks, they became just as bad as the petty criminals in the streets, if not worse, considering they were given guns and badges and they could legally basically do whatever they want. Often, if they weren't trigger happy, they were easily bribed by the bootleggers. In New York, for example, about half of the agents were fired within the first year that they were hired. So it was really hard finding a good man, back to Miss Willem Brandt's point. Different states had varying levels of enforcement. Some states had strict enforcement codes, especially those who had already had some type of state-level prohibition law like Kansas or whatever in place before 1920. Others, such as New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, had weaker enforcement. In fact, and I loved this quote, I just thought it was hilarious, it made me laugh. The governor of New Jersey was quoted, and it's like some newspaper or something. I got this from the Ralston Cider Mill Museum, but it's a cool quote. He said, "The state would remain as wet as the Atlantic Ocean." All right, New Jersey.
You gotta say it with an
Alright.
Atlantic accent.
This is
Oh, yeah, 100%.
yeah. This is why New Jersey is the way that it is.
And New Jersey will stay as wet as the Atlantic Ocean.
What was
Yes. It's true. I will say, though, famously...
Is that your transatlantic
That is.
ocean?
Sorry,
That's
I've been
Atlantic.
watching videos
That's
and I'm trying to work on my Atlantic
It's really
accent.
good. I liked it. It was good.
Gotta put it together. You're like da 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 da.
Yeah.
Well, I still have the James T. Kirk in me. And the Atlantic Ocean will stay as wet as the western coast.
Not bad.
You sound like someone from the 1920s that had a wheelchair that spoke for them.
Oh, dang. Yay, polio. Let's go.
Oh, come on, guys. 20 years before
Maybe
FDR.
you have the chair for
Come on. Oh, man.
Alrighty, Kara.
All right, let's
set
go.
us back on track.
Sorry to temper the mood a little bit, but in rural areas where enforcement was weak or non-existent, the KKK had taken the opportunity to enforce the areas themselves. Originally created during Reconstruction, which is a dumpster fire in itself, to enforce those areas, the KKK was a group who actively fought against equality for African Americans and other immigrants. Their influence waned during the First World War, but gained steam again after the war and into Prohibition. They would use Prohibition as a moral cause to spread their hatred and vitriol, where they were most active targeting minorities and people who supported equality under the guise of enforcing Prohibition laws. And they wouldn't only target African Americans. That was probably the most common target for them, but they would also target people who were Catholic, Irish immigrants, Chinese immigrants, Jewish immigrants. It was bad.
A lot of people don't know that. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that the KKK didn't just target people of color necessarily. Yeah.
It was most common.
They were
in the
like,
South, but
they were like hardcore America only kind of folks. Like, if you weren't born here, you don't belong here, kind of a thing.
For them, even if you were born here, you didn't belong here.
Even if you just aren't white.
They were bad.
Essentially. And also believed in everything that they believed in.
Very intolerant
Essentially.
group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it almost sounds like another group of people that...
Despite their claims, however...
Anyways,
Klansmen would often take liquor from those.
Prohibition. Let's go.
Klansmen would often take liquor from those they terrorized and drink it themselves, proving that their mission was not, in fact, enforcing Prohibition, and they were total hypocrites. Membership of the group grew from 1920 to 1925 from about 2 million to 5 million people nationwide. And they tried to align themselves with the WCTU and the ASL, even though they were much more hateful and militant than those other groups. So I don't want to put in the notion that they were very much in line with those other groups. It could be said that maybe some members of those other groups were in the KKK, but I would say that I wouldn't put their ideals with the other two groups because that's not fair. This iteration of the KKK in the 1920s would eventually die out during the 1930s during the Depression, but it wouldn't be the last time they'd pop up in the U.S. They would rise back to popularity after World War II and into the civil rights movements of the 1960s. I do encourage you to read about that because it is good to know the good and the bad and the ugly of American history. And it's also very empowering and impactful to read about how people overcame that. I do
remember my grandfather telling me when his dad would take him into Chicago. And there would be Prohibition agents like raiding locations and bringing out barrels of liquor. And then what they would do is they would break holes in them and they just dump it in the sewers.
Yes, that was very common. That happened quite a lot.
But there was people in those sewers with barrels themselves that were collecting it. And those were police officers. And my grandfather remembers seeing police officers in the sewers collecting the alcohol because then they would distribute it themselves.
I 100% believe that. 100% believe it. So on top of everything else, on top of everything else, there was a general assumption around enforcement amongst the federal prohibition unit and the state police. In the states, especially more lenient states like New York, they took the view that if the federal government wanted prohibition so bad, they could be the ones to spend the money and the resources to take care of it. If they wanted it so bad, they can do it, like whatever. On the federal level, at the same time, the government was being run by a largely conservative group of people, which meant that they were cutting back on spending and resources, leaving room for the states to handle it. The states want their rights so bad they can handle it. So both sectors of government were like, no, the other guy's got it. That's a lot of miscommunication for you. The second division, so the first, remember, was the IRS, the Department of Treasury, handling enforcement. We just talked about that. The second division on the Prohibition front was the Justice Department, in charge of persecution, a little bit different than the enforcement. As mentioned before, the head of the department at the time was Harry Daugherty. Daugherty stacked his office with friends who saw their role as an opportunity to make more money than to follow the 18th Amendment. Throughout the Prohibition era, Daugherty and his office would do frequent business with bootleggers who would come into their department after being caught or arrested smuggling alcohol or what have you. In general, what would happen is a bootlegger would come in, pay his own bail in cash, and usually was thousands of dollars. And then in return, they'd be offered not just bail, but protection from being officially prosecuted through pardons, paroles, or deals for a price. And the Daugherty Justice Department would just become as corrupt as the Prohibition officers who were in the street catching the people who would eventually pay them anyways. The corruption in enforcement, as well as in persecution, would be a hard-fought battle for the people who would swear to do their duty as officials of the law without being enticed by bootleggers enticed by bootleggers with deep pockets.
So from the outset, we're seeing this whole amendment, we're seeing this whole constitutional act just fall apart.
Oh, within an hour. It's
it was literally that fast that this whole thing just fell apart.
So fast.
Wow.
Yes, it's bad. And I do want to remind you the intention. These women were, fighting domestic abuse, and their husbands were out all night, and prostitution was rampant, which means STDs were rampant, and they blamed the alcohol, and it was a women's movement. They wanted to make sure that their husbands were safe. They wanted to be safe. They wanted their children to be safe. It was, the intentions were there, and the intentions were good, but it kind of blew up.
Yeah, it's just fascinating because it really kind of sheds light, especially at that time, the weakness of men. Like, yes, they did work ungodly hours, especially during the Great Depression. Like, they really did try to provide. But for some odd reason, these men had no way of coming home and unwinding in a healthy way. And their only solution was to turn to alcohol, which then turned to prostitution, which then turned to STDs and all that stuff.
And I have two yes ands to that.
Okay.
Yes, and I think it was more of a societal problem than it was a men's problem.
Oh, okay.
And then yes, and I keep running into this theme over and over again. The country is a big place. There are a lot of people. It's not all men. It's not all families. Maybe a majority, or maybe the loudest group. But there are also, remember, pockets of good men who are going home. They're doing their job. They're paying for their family. They're doing the best they can. So, and it's also one of those things too where, and this person we're going to talk about is one of them where, hey, I like a social drink every once in a while. I don't really agree with prohibition, but I'll do my best to follow the law.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that too. So it's actually a really complicated thing, just like any other point in history, just like it is today, where you have a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas and a lot of different ideals. And sometimes the loudest voices are just the loudest voices. And sometimes the national movements are movements that we really need, even when people really don't want them.
100%.
So
yeah,
it's like the constant what is it, like a contradiction almost, because you have two ends of something that, like prohibition, or like for right now, gun control, gun violence. It's a big thing. As a woman, as a tiny woman, I like to protect myself. I would like to have that right. But I also, you also have these feelings towards how things in society are playing out because of what we have now. You know what I mean? So it's like, as a person who doesn't really drink very often, I like to have the right to be able to go to the bar and have a drink.
Right.
Am I abusing my family when I go home? No. Do I like to have that right? Yeah. Will I fight for that right? I don't know if we go through another prohibition.
To abuse
We'll
your
see
family,
what happens.
or
No. To be able to make the choice, because I'm not someone who is abusing that. You know what I mean? I'm not someone who abuses that that privilege that I have, to be able to go to the bar and have a drink with my whoever's.
Yeah.
I don't go home and, abuse my family, but there are so many people that at what point, what do we do to help the situation? Is it a societal thing? Is it the liquor? Is it how do we fix this as a whole? But there's so many different avenues and so many different approaches to it.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a really tricky thing to figure out, because I personally think that 99.9% of men out there are decent human beings that aren't abusive, that aren't wanting to cause harm to their families. But I do think there's a significant percentage of them that when they have a significant amount of alcohol in them, they become a completely different person.
Yes.
And
100%.
as so, like, in their heart, they're not bad people. Like, my dad was not a bad person.
Good people make bad choices. Right.
But then when my dad had alcohol in him, he was an absolute monster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, like, how do you pass a law that singles out those men who are decent human beings that become something else in the presence of alcohol, versus those people that aren't monsters or violent people when they do have alcohol in their system? Like, how do you pass a law that separates that out? And I just don't think there's a way that you can do it.
And also successfully enforce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think to just add more complexity into it, because you're welcome. That's what I do here. The mid to late 1800s and the early 1900s, you didn't have things like mental health and therapy and medicine like we do today.
Yeah.
So this is the best they felt that they could do to make change for themselves and for where they live. And in that regard, I get it. I get both sides. Like, I get wanting to just, unwind after a long day. I've been there. No, I totally get it. After a long day of work, you want to go and have a drink and just decompress. 100%. I totally get that. I also understand, the women who are having a rough go at it at the same time. So yeah, it's a really complicated issue. And I think it's something that a lot of people lose the complexities of it sometimes when you learn it in broad strokes. So anyway, that was my point. I think we all have some good input. This is the lady that I want to have lunch with.
Mabel Walker Willenbrant.
That's her. She's wonderful, I think.
Anybody named Mabel is going to be badass.
Mabel. She's wonderful. And I'm going to make you like her more. You ready? I'm going to try to convince you to want to have lunch with her. Mabel Walker Willenbrant would be appointed as U.S. Assistant Attorney General in 1920, shortly after the Volstead Act was put into action. She was appointed.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah. She was.
Okay.
Woo, she's great.
A U.S. Assistant Attorney General?
Yep. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, she's no slouch.
Big stuff.
Oh, yeah. She was appointed after she was recommended by U.S. Senator Hiram Johnson, legal mentors, and circuit judges in her state, at the time California, putting her in the highest office a woman has ever held in the U.S. government at that time. She was considered the most powerful woman in the country in 1920. Willenbrant was born in Kansas on May 28th in 1889. As an adult, she became a school teacher and married her principal, Arthur Willenbrant, before moving to Arizona in 1910 for a brief period to assist Arthur's health as he was diagnosed with tuberculosis. While she was there, Mabel Willenbrant received her teaching degree from the Tempe Normal School in 1911. i.e. ASU.
Nice.
So she is an ASU grad. She got her teaching degree there.
That is actually the same place that I got my teaching degree from.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
In fact, if you look at my teaching degree, it says Arizona State University, and then underneath it, it says Tempe Normal School.
There you go. Alumni along with Mabel Walker Willenbrant.
So yeah, I'm old school teaching, and I'm in trucking.
It's fine. We're doing great. The couple moved to California in 1912. While there, she got a teaching job and put herself through law school, in fact, attending classes at night. Willenbrandt earned her law degree from USC in 1916, then spent the next 4 years as Los Angeles' first female public defender, primarily working on cases involving prostitution. She would gain a reputation as a tenacious, vocal prosecutor who took great pride in her work. And I will say, she divorced her husband in 1916 because the deal was that she would work full-time while he went to law school full-time and she went to law school at night. And then when he graduated, the deal would switch, right? Makes sense. A lot of couples do that. He didn't do that. He didn't pull his weight. So she was like, you know what? Bye. And she divorced him.
I'm divorcing you.
So
goodbye.
That's the kind of person we're dealing with.
Dang.
And then this is 1916. This is way before the things we have now.
She sounds like someone in 2025.
Straight up. I would love to talk to this person.
She's like, oh, your priorities are all messed up. I don't need to be with you.
Yeah.
So
we have different goals.
See, at least when I was dating my fiance, she was going to school for biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, sugar mama, let's go. And so like the policy was that we would not have kids or anything until she got done with her degree and making a grip of money working for some pharmaceutical company. And then I could pursue my lofty aspirations of making a ton of money in teaching. Right. Neither of those panned out. We had our first kid 9 months later, and she got her biochem degree, and that whole thing fell apart. So much for the sugar mama thing. But
life do be like that.
But still, like, dude, if you're going to be dating a girl who's going to college and she's further along than you, let her finish.
Mm-hmm.
Work until she can finish, so then she can work and let you finish.
Yeah, Arthur made a mistake.
Period.
Period. That's
I know. It's fine now. She's got this.
Yeah. I feel like she filled out her own divorce papers, represented herself.
The whole thing.
Like, I feel like she took half of his estate, no matter what. Like,
she signed the prenup and everything.
Yeah. She got all this figured out.
Willenbrandt would become known as the person who took her job as a lawyer and attorney general very seriously. As somebody who enjoyed an occasional drink socially and far from passionate about the temperance issue, Willenbrandt was not somebody who was a staunch dry supporter, which I thought this is very interesting. And the bootlegger we're going to talk about in a little bit, he was 100% dry. He didn't touch alcohol. But Willenbrandt, she liked her glass of wine every once in a while. She would drink socially, like she didn't care. But once she took this job and the 18th Amendment was passed, she went completely dry because it was the law and it was her duty to uphold it personally and professionally. So, you know what? I give her credit. Good for her. Going into her assignment, Willenbrandt knew it was an uphill battle. She already knew this. In an interview, Willenbrandt was asked why she was given the task of leading the Prohibition unit in the Justice Department. She responded with, quote, well, as one of my friends said, nobody in the Justice Department wanted that job. It had no political advantages at all. So, of course, they gave it to Mabel. Unquote. Willenbrandt began fighting not only prohibition, but corruption within her department and the Department of Treasury. In terms of corruption, Willenbrandt understood who she was dealing with in Daugherty and his cronies. In a 1929 interview with Time magazine, she said, quote, it will take many a day for law enforcement to recover from the setback it suffered under General Lincoln Andrews. He multiplied publicity, created a public psychology in his own favor, began to put in office men who were temperamentally and in every other way unfitted for the task. His notorious appointments, Roscoe Harper, Frank Hale, Major Walton Green, Ned M. Green, I refuse to believe that out of our 100,000 population and perhaps 20, I think it's supposed to be 20
It's 100 million.
Yeah, 100 million population and perhaps the 20 million who believe in prohibition. 4,000 agents cannot be found who cannot be bought. So good for her. She knows what's going on. And that was from 1929. out of Time magazine. You can find that interview. It's actually very fascinating.
Were all the ellipses and brackets from that original article?
Yep, I just copy pasted it.
Wow. I feel like, I'm sorry, whenever I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we throw in the brackets 9 and 10, I feel like somebody was being quoted kind of loosely.
It's possible. Considering it was just an interview, I'm sure that they were writing it down, handwriting it as fast as they could.
Yeah, that's true
How
too.
to stitch it together.
That's just the English lit major in me, because we would be like, as soon as you see more than 2 ellipses in a quote, you just have to discredit it as a valid quote because somebody is editing it for a specific purpose. But then again, though, you're right. This is all probably being handwritten. So it was like scribbles on a notepad.
Yep. And again, with every source, you do have to take into consideration all of the contingencies that go on with it. So you could have a very valid point and you could be right, or I could have a really valid point, or it could be both. We don't really know. I just know that this is 1929 and it's a primary source and I'm going to take it.
Okay. And it's from Time magazine. It's not like it's a
Yeah.
It's not like some weird sketchy tabloid magazine.
Right. And I have the article linked at the bottom in these notes. So if anybody wants to read it.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. If you ever want to find it, it's there. In other words, Willem Brandt was looking for an incorruptible people to aid her in her work. And in some ways she was right that there were untouchable, in quotes, untouchable, untouchable agents out there who did their best despite the circumstances to enforce prohibition. Willem Brandt's approach to enforce prohibition would be to stop it at the source of alcohol where smuggling was happening overland and oversea. Chapter 8, rum. Now we're going to get to the fun stuff. You're welcome. In the fall of 1921, Captain William Bill McCoy eased his schooner Henry L. Marshall out of the Nassau harbor, her hold stacked tight with burlap wrapped parcels of Scotch whiskey. Each bundle contained 6 straw-jacketed bottles. Steering north, the handsome former yacht maker aimed for a point just beyond the 3-mile limit off New Jersey. There, he dropped anchor alongside other schooners, forming what reporters would eventually call Rum Row. Smaller wooden contact boats, often piloted by fishermen and opportunistic smugglers, buzzed out from shore. Cash in hand, they were ready to shop. McCoy made his terms clear while working with smugglers or buyers. No bribes, no dilution of alcoholic drinks, no gangster involvement. Those were his rules. Quote, he says, I was outside the limit selling whiskey and good whiskey, he later told the Coast Guard officer. Customers knew they were getting the genuine article, the real stuff, the good alcohol, which earned him the title of the real McCoy. Note, he did not come up with this term. It came before him. It was not coined by him, but he did use it. And it was good marketing, so good on him. For several days at a time, Bill McCoy would hold his position offshore, conducting his wholesale trade. Small boats, shuttled cases back to hidden coves and private slips along the New Jersey and Long Island coasts. By keeping the international waters and refusing entanglements with organized crime, McCoy earned himself the reputation as a gentleman smuggler. His business relied on efficiency, maritime skills, and reputation rather than violence and political protection like some others that we will talk about in the future. This routine, loading at Nassau or St. Pierre, sailing north, anchoring offshore, and selling alcohol until the hold was empty, defined McCoy's career until his capture by the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard cutter Seneca in 1923. Even then, as he faced jail, he insisted he had nothing but regret. Nothing to regret. Sorry, he had no regrets. No regrets for Mr. McCoy here. William Bill McCoy was one of the first rum runners to operate during Prohibition. Rum Row was a row of various ships parked about 3 or more miles off the New York coast and New Jersey coastlines. The ships were essentially floating liquor stores. Bootleggers and smugglers would sail out at night, tell the ships what they wanted, and they would get the supply to sell in the States. 3 miles, at least early on, was the general consensus for international waters, so ships that were not under Prohibition laws would often fly like the Union Jack or some international flag to stay out of trouble. Bootleggers like McCoy would sail out to the West Indies, usually Nassau in the Bahamas, Europe, or sometimes Canada, on these big ships, supply their stock there, stop at another island, wait for a dark rainy day, then get to the 3-mile mark in the U.S. where they would be met with smaller and faster contact boats. The contact boats would be loaded, and they would use isolated coves or prearranged docking points for quick offloading. Sometimes crates were dropped overboard and they were washed ashore in the early hours of the day. So I watched a lady's interview, and she said that she had like a grandfather or somebody during Prohibition. They would go to the shore early in the morning, like super early in the morning overnight, and they'd watch these crates of alcohol wash up on the shore, and they'd like try to jack one or two for themselves and then try to go off. I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah.
How many sharks do you think got a little tipsy from those crates?
In the Atlantic Ocean? Maybe a few.
Like the isn't like isn't there like a lot of sharks around the Nassau Islands?
Nassau. I think so.
Nassau Island. Yeah, that's like where a bunch of ship shark attacks happen.
Activity.
Yeah.
I think closer down there. I think so.
And then you think of all the crab and lobster that's just getting
I'm
trashed.
not talking about crab. That's for sure. I don't care about the crab and the lobster.
Oh no.
Well, I
What's
do.
the shore? They have
It's
that
easier to
outside,
catch
too.
when they're just all like flopping all over the place because they're drunk off their butts.
Get a little tipsy while you eat some
tipsy.
crab.
Yeah, you catch them and they're pre-beer battered. Let's
There
go.
you go. That's it.
Kind of fire. Sounds kind of good.
Once ashore, the crates of liquor were loaded onto trucks at the port, usually labeled fresh fish or Bob's meat supply or what have you. Before heading to a distribution point, the autos would also have false compartments in them for safer transit. McCoy would have his schooner outfitted with faster and smaller engines and then renamed her the Tomoka. He could transport between 1,500 and 2,000 cases of liquor in one trip, making anywhere between $60,000 and $100,000 in 1920s money for that trip. So today's conversion is $1 to $1.6 million for one trip. He was able to charge so much because he had a reputation for selling high quality products. Real McCoy. All right. After he was arrested,
are we getting into the beginnings of the rum runners?
Yes,
where they would soup up their Ford cars.
Oh, that happens in the South, and we'll talk about that. Rum runners.
Because that's where NASCAR comes from.
Yes, and I do talk about that. It's true.
Okay. All right, I'll shut up.
No, you're good. You're good. But rum runners were generally off the coast, off the Atlantic coast, 3 to 12 miles, depending on what year it was, to avoid U.S. waters. And they would take really fast boats, not quite cars, back and forth. And then they would use the cars to get to wherever speakeasy they're selling it to.
Oh, okay. So they were like final mile. in transportation, they were the final mile.
Yeah.
Guys that would
the car guys were the final mile guys, and they would soup up their cars to go vroom vroom and go super fast. But that comes from the South with moonshine, and we'll talk about that here soon.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. So after McCoy was arrested in 1923, and essentially he retired from bootlegging after that, Rum Row would continue to be in operation until December of 1933, with the 21st Amendment that ended Prohibition. Over in Nassau, supplying McCoy was Gertrude Chloe the bootlegging Queen Lithgow.
Here we go.
Yeah. Originally a stenographer from Ohio, Lithgow moved to Nassau to work for a British wholesale liquor company there. Because she was in a British colony working for a British company, every ounce of liquor sold was legal on her part. Lithgow would supply bootleggers with so much money that when the U.S. government went to the British to do something about the operation in the Bahamas, they refused because they were making so much money off of it.
Sick.
Lithgow eventually earned a reputation for herself amongst bootleggers for having quality product. She ran her business out of the Lucerne Hotel in Nassau, which was often a place in which bootleggers and journalists would often hang out and have a drink. According to most contemporary accounts, Lithgow was a proud woman who wasn't afraid to confront anybody who threatened her business, or her product. One source even claimed that a man once criticized her liquor, and she responded by pointing her pistol at him and threatened to shoot him.
Go, girl.
I like this person.
She's pretty cool.
She's funny.
She's pretty cool. Lithgow did have a run-in
she's
with
hardcore.
the law. Yeah, you don't mess with her, and you don't mess with her reputation, man. Lithgow did have a run-in with the law in 1924. She was arrested for smuggling 1,000 barrels of whiskey into New Orleans. But she was acquitted of all charges because she was in Nassau at the time working for the British. So that was her loophole. And for the next 2 years, Lithgow continued to operate with caution. However, she did decide to retire from bootlegging in 1926 to avoid being arrested again.
I love how brazen these people are.
Oh, so much.
Like, they just don't give a crap. Like,
no, they're great.
Like the real McCoy, Lithgow, like, I don't care what the government says. I'm doing this and I'm getting away with it, whether they like it or not.
Yes, I think that's why this time period is so popular, is because of all the colorful people that were documented back then. It's great. By 1923, rum row stretched from New England all the way down to Florida, with dozens of ships anchored offshore, ready to sell booze they were holding. According to the Coast Guard's annual reports, which you can find, it's not as colorful or interesting to read, especially today. You might get bored. But hey, there's tables. It's cool. There's numbers. It's estimated that about 500 ships supplying the eastern United States by 1924, sorry. However, by 1927, a decline began to occur due to the Coast Guard's efforts to mitigate rum running along the coast. In 1924, the U.S. jurisdiction was extended from 3 miles to 12 miles. That's why I said it depends on the year you look, making liquor transportation riskier. With Maybelle Willembrandt lobbying for more Coast Guard funding in the background, the Guard began to increase the number of seizures, searches of ships or boats, and reassigned Coast Guard destroyers to the water between Rum Row and the shore. By the late 1920s, the popularity of rum row was overtaken by other forms of transit over land, including domestic products made illegally or liquor made in Canada that was smuggled into the United States. All right, Chapter 9, Gin Ricky. The McCoy and rum road runners would utilize the ocean to smuggle booze from other countries. Other smugglers would use the vast border between Canada and the U.S. Some used the Great Lakes, and other more creative types would fly it in. Canada was the most popular source to smuggle in liquor. Because of the sheer size of the border, it makes a lot of sense. To smuggle alcohol over land, bootleggers had various tactics that worked depending on how much effort they wanted to put into it. Some smugglers simply walked or ran across the border on foot in areas where the border patrol was a little scarce. There are stories of bootleggers who would use sleds and horses to smuggle in liquor during the winter, which I thought was pretty interesting. The most popular overland form of smuggling over the Canadian border was automobiles. A lot of bootleggers would create false bottoms in trucks, alter car trunks to make secret spaces for contraband, or simply make their engines faster to outrun border patrol. All of this was done under the cover of night, so it's very rare you would see this during the day. In the Midwest, bootleggers would utilize the Great Lakes to smuggle in booze in a myriad of different ways. The simplest and probably the most likely to get you caught was packing it into little boats and sailing it across. Others would pack the alcohol into their own luggage and then take the ferry into Detroit with all of the other international travelers who went in and out of Canada, like a souvenir after a lovely Canadian getaway. Others would ferry their cars over, hide their alcohol in the car somewhere, and then ferry it back, which is kind of clever too. In other parts of the country, smugglers would use the railway systems that were meant for international trade. Often bonded legal alcohol from Canada would come in sealed freight cars, and it would come over the border legally, and U.S. bootleggers would unseal them once they arrived in the States, take the liquor from the train car, and then turn around and sell it. They wouldn't even bother sealing it back up, I don't think. In freight shipments, alcohol would be found hidden in the train cars with other goods coming in the U.S. from, regular groceries or what have you, resources, goods, all that fun stuff. And then they would also come in on passenger lines. People would smuggle it into their luggage. That's where we get bootlegging from. That term actually comes from the Civil War, maybe around the same time as the Civil War. Essentially, it's a smuggling trick where, you'd put the rum in your bootleg. That's where the term comes from.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And then there were the pilot. There are several cases, which I read a few, and I was too lazy to type them out, but I encourage you to look them up, especially in Washington State, where pilots would fly from Canada into the U.S. with liquor in tow. They would fly at night over remote locations. The most common practice was landing in like a farm or a field or somewhere like that to avoid detection. They would be unloaded and they would do it all over again. The most famous one is a World War I vet. He got really rich doing it. Probably got paid better than the Army. So good for him, or the Air Force, or whatever it was for World War I. Chapter 10, tonic. Since ancient times, and maybe not so much today, alcohol was considered an important medical drug and thought to have qualities that heal. This was still a widely held belief up until 1920 when the Volstead Act was passed, which earned the medical field their exemption from enforcement of prohibition law. The intention of the exemption, I think, is fairly reasonable. Considering the beliefs at the time, doctors commonly prescribed a certain amount of alcohol to treat several ailments that range from headaches to tuberculosis. It was even common to mix with medicinal herbs to give them to sick children. The most common liquor for medicine by the 1920s was whiskey and brandy. Surprisingly, the prescribed amounts weren't huge. Like, you would think that it's massive considering we're still talking about it. It's 2025. In reality, it's not. According to the American Institute of the History of Pharmacy, adults were usually given 1 fluid ounce every 2 to 3 hours, and children were given 1/2 to 2 teaspoons every 3 hours. By 1917, there was some discussion about the efficiency of medicinal liquor. The American Health Association passed a result on condemning its uses, claiming their benefits were not founded on scientific fact. Wayne Wheeler and the ASL had even worked on trying to convince physicians to discount alcohol as a medicine, but they weren't able to get it done by 1920 to be affected by the Volstead Act. Despite these efforts, a survey in 1921 showed that 51% of acting physicians believed the therapeutic qualities of whiskey were effective. With half of the country's physicians, maybe more, were okay with providing alcohol for medicine, it became common practice for people to get sick, and be prescribed alcohol. There were whole families who would just suddenly come down with some sort of illness all at the same time. It was wild. Crazy epidemics were happening.
So everybody was just having to just guzzle NyQuil as much as they could.
I'm sick. I need some whiskey.
I need whiskey. I'm sick.
Me, Timmy, and JoJo were all sick with tuberculosis,
That's it.
tacoma, and we need some brandy.
Yes. We need some scotch for my gonorrhea that's just running rampant right now.
Excellent.
That's pretty funny. That's not funny, actually. It's terrible.
There were also doctors and pharmacists who would use their prescription powers to make some extra money on the side while selling prescriptions to those who were willing to pay for it. Historical estimates put the number of prescriptions for alcohol from 1920 to 1933 somewhere in the 11 million per year range. 11 million.
Jeez.
Oh my God.
That's so much. So, if our math is right, based on the numbers historians have generally agreed on, that's 150 to 180 million prescriptions over the 13 years of Prohibition. There's one physician that I found he's on record, and he wrote 475 prescriptions in a single day.
Holy crap.
Remember, this is before doctors had that little rule where you can only write so many prescriptions. This is way before that. That's not a thing yet.
Oh. Well, look what's coming up soon.
The doctors' offices and pharmacies became extremely busy, as you can imagine, between 1920 and 1933. One example is from a small pharmacy out of Chicago who grew from 20 stores in 1919 to over 500 stores nationwide in 1921. That little pharmacy? Walgreens.
Oh, my mom just said I need to switch.
What's so funny is like in the last episode, I mentioned The Great Gatsby and how James Gatz built his empire was through drugstores.
Well, this guy might
selling
sound familiar.
bootlegged alcohol out the back door.
I have a story for you. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
George Remus, the son of German immigrants in Chicago, was a trained pharmacist turned lawyer when the Volstead Act went into effect in 1920. Remus specialized in criminal law, so naturally he defended bootleggers early in Prohibition. But Remus saw a lot of potential in bootlegging. His clients would pay him an enormous amount in cash, believing he could make more money bootlegging than he could being a lawyer, which is crazy. Remus decided to give it a shot. He knew that manufacturing, transportation, and selling liquor for medicinal purposes was still legal. Likely using the money he had earned defending bootleggers, he bought a few rickhouses, which are warehouses that stored whiskey or other liquors for medical or manufacturing purposes. All above board, all legal. He bought all the stored liquor. To do this, and to do it right, Remus moved to Ohio, just outside of Cincinnati, where about 80% of all of the medicinal liquor was stored for the country. These rickhouses were stocked by local distillers, still operating under the medicinal manufacturing and religious exemption. Then Remus bought the warehouse's bonded inventory that had been verified by the paperwork he obtained and companies that handled warehouse receipts so he could legally possess, at least on paper, huge amounts of whiskey. He also bought his own pharmacies and wholesale drugstore fronts that could lawfully handle medicinal whiskey. Scholars call this the circle. In a nutshell, Remus bought up distilled spirits made and stored for medicinal purposes. He bought the paperwork that showed he could store them legally. He then bought stores he could sell his own medicinal liquor, then used all of the paperwork going through the drugstores, including prescriptions, to buy up more alcohol and then resell it again. He essentially made a cycle of paperwork that covered his illegal bootlegging with the legal paper trail. Genius. Now, Remus had to ask himself, wouldn't it be fishy if the liquor from my rickhouses went only to my drugstores? Yes, George. Yes, it would be. Therefore, what Remus did was stage robberies on his own trucks. Remus would create a consignee address on his paperwork that was scheduled to go to a legitimate pharmacy. And then he would have his own guys hijack his own truck and then reroute the product to a third location, usually a farm somewhere desolate. And those barrels would be relabeled, stored, and blended with stuff he had already in stock before sending it out to his own pharmacies, speakeasies, or bootleggers in other states. Crazy.
Wow.
So he would take these bonded barrels and rickhouses, buy all the paperwork, get more paperwork, buy more alcohol based on that paperwork, and then sell it. Ridiculous. By the beginning of 1922, Remus was controlling about a third of the U.S.'s alcohol distribution and had made a fortune doing it. His wife, Augusta Imogen Holmes, was likely to revel in it. She and Remus had a tumultuous relationship. They had started an affair, which would eventually end up in divorce with their previous spouses, and then they married each other in 1920 while Remus was still a lawyer. Together, Remus and Holmes would hold lavish parties at their mansion, which they called the Marble Palace. Gorgeous. Made it from scratch. In 1921 to 22, they held a New Year's Eve party with all of the hottest, richest couples in attendance. As party gifts, the men received diamond stick pens and the women were given a new car. Imogen appeared mid-party in a bathing suit, being sung to by a 15-piece orchestra. So it's wild. But the fun wasn't destined to last forever. Maybelle Willenbrandt, our girl, received a telegram from Ohio asking for federal help with a whiskey problem. Willenbrandt sent federal agents to Cincinnati to root out Remus. In October of 1921, Remus was arrested for bootlegging activities right before that big fancy party that they had. And he wasn't worried because he paid off a ton of people on the local and federal level. So he's paying off people in Washington, friends. While awaiting trial, Remus continued to run his circle business as usual. Willenbrandt continued to send trusted agents to Ohio, including one of her best, Franklin Dodge. The agents sent back information to Willenbrandt about the circle, dealings with corrupt White House officials, and other dealings that Remus was involved in. The information was so overwhelming that Willenbrandt would go to Cincinnati herself to assist. Once enough evidence was collected, she returned to Washington, leaving Dodge in charge of the case in her absence. Dodge continued to collect evidence until the trial began in May of 1922. Despite his confidence in his connections within the government, Remus was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison.
Nice.
For the next few years, Remus would be in and out of federal prison. In his first term, between 1923 and 25, his wife, Imogen, would begin to take control of the whiskey empire they had built together. She had legal control of the mansion. Remus put it in her name when it was built as a birthday present, and began an affair with the Prohibition agent Franklin Dodd. Juicy, friends. Imogen and Franklin began to work together in conspiring against Remus without him knowing while he was in jail. Dude, I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Jerry.
I know, it's so juicy. After Remus was released from jail, he learned about Imogen and Franklin's affair at the mansion he had built, the state of his empire, which had been financially cleaned out from under him, and all of the documentation he meticulously put together were erased. Between 1925 and 1927, Remus and Holmes attacked each other with lawsuits and divorce hearings. It was really ugly. Then, on October 6, 1927, Remus spotted Imogen and her daughter Ruth getting in a car while he was on his way to a meeting with Dodge to talk about, legal stuff, trying to figure it out. Immediately, he told his driver to follow them. Imogen spotted an irate Remus chasing her down, turning the day into an action movie scene with a car chase and a chase on foot, like all the things. Remus eventually caught up with his wife and shot her in the stomach. Remus turned himself in, then during his trial pleaded not guilty.
How do you plead not guilty to...
The trial itself...
I'm sorry, I accidentally shot my spouse in the stomach.
And drove my car and
this story was
fascinating.
And all these things right before.
Like, this needs to be a movie right now. The trial itself was a sensation all over the country. It had drama, a love triangle, a murdered wife. It had everything. In the end, and this is infuriating, but in the end, Remus was sent to an insane asylum with a jury that felt sympathy for him. He would later be released to live out the rest of his days quietly in Kentucky without issue until his death in 1952.
Oh, you're joking.
George Remus. Now,
he moved to. He lived out his life in Kentucky. So
I don't care. He should have been behind bars or still in the asylum.
Here's the interesting thing about George Remus. It's been pretty much proven that George Remus was the inspiration for Jay Gatsby.
Yep.
I was going to say I've heard of him.
It hasn't been proven that they actually ever met, but Remus was famous enough in the papers for Fitzgerald to make something out of it.
And there was a Native American guy, Trimalchio, that Fitzgerald kind of like laid claim to. It was a Native American chief that would house these lavish parties for white folks. And that was the legend has that is also the other part of his vision of Gatsby is that, like, let's house these super lavish parties and get everybody on East and West Egg involved. And that's how I'm going to elevate my status.
Interesting.
And
I haven't read that part before. I'd like to read that.
Yeah, it's actually in the foreword for The Great Gatsby now.
Oh, I'll check that out.
Yeah, the original title of the book was supposed to be The Great Trimalchio. And then it changed to the, Great Gatsby. So
sweet.
But it would make sense, though, like, this dude was an inspiration unto himself.
He was something.
I mean,
it's almost like Fitzgerald was like, once he sobered up for a whopping 2-3 months, that's where he slammed out The Great Gatsby. Because he was able to, like, look at everything that was going on in society, and he plowed through that book. He hand wrote everything in the course of a summer, and then he submitted it to his editor. The editor's like, we got to make a lot of changes. And Gatsby's like, no, Fitzgerald was like, nope, just publish it as it is. And so that's the copy that we have today.
There you go.
Yeah, I've read the book like 20 times. I freaking love it.
Yeah. I haven't read it since high school. I need to pick it up again. But yeah. Also, one more fun fact before I move on. George Remus was the guy I was telling you about, completely dry. Never drank a drop of alcohol during Prohibition.
Yep, that's what I've also heard too. I mean, that's something that was that in
Yes.
Great Gatsby? I
Yeah,
don't remember.
Gatsby never drank.
Yep.
Yeah. But I do remember hearing about George Remus. I didn't know the ending to that tale there, but
There you go. Well, now you know.
definitely knew that.
Yep. Yeah, he was completely dry, and the
wanna
woman
read
trying
more
to
into it.
arrest him was somebody who enjoyed a little bit of alcohol every once in a while.
That's fascinating.
So I always find that really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you can't separate the literature from the culture.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know about Remus. I knew about Trimalchio, but I didn't know about Remus.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that. It was a little
Yeah.
dumb
No,
for you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I got you.
You're
Chapter
like
11.
historian for the win. Loser. You
No,
literature major crap.
no,
That's
that's
not-
not it.
not-
That's
that's
I
not
know,
what she said.
I know. It's more like a long-standing joke between Kara and I, because I look at history through the lens of literature, whereas like Kara looks at history through the lens of like primary sources and all that kind of stuff. And so like Kara and I are notorious for having arguments about the same stupid thing over and over and over again.
Mhm.
It's true.
Absolutely.
That like we come to the same
Absolutely.
conclusions, but we just do it differently.
Facts. It's true.
Yeah, wait.
Yeah,
Kara and I
100%.
need to have a whole episode on like the cause of the Civil War.
Oh God.
No, I was just thinking that, and I was like, we don't want to talk about the Civil War and the reasons why it started.
We don't have
We're
to
not
go there.
going there. It's a vetoed discussion.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's bad. I would just say that like we have two different perspectives. Both perspectives end up on the same conclusion, but it's just fascinating to look at it from the perspective of a historian versus a literature major, and how they both kind of like come together in the end. And it really fleshes out a lot of humanity in terms of the Civil War.
And it also flushes out my comfort when I walk into the room and I get the PG argument version. I'm like, Mom, can you get the
Or like our
scared?
students are recording us in time lapse.
Yeah,
that
good.
was
That's
so
great.
funny.
that was funny.
They,
Kara looks like she's
I'm
trying
really
to
no,
fly.
I was like,
Next
blah,
chapter.
blah, 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 blah.
All right, chapter 11.
Sacramental wine.
Sacramental wine. While some used medicinal exemptions as a loophole to get alcohol, others used the religious exemption. The Volstead Act states, nothing in this title, and this is a quote, by the way, quote, nothing in this title shall be held to apply to the manufacture, sale, transportation, importation, possession, or distribution of wine for sacramental purposes or like religious rites, except Section 6, save as the same requirements to permit purchase, and Section 10 hereof, and the provisions of this act prescribing penalties for the violation of either of said sections.
Wow, that's
Very,
just beautiful
very lolly
writing right there.
It's
Yeah,
very,
that
very lawyery.
really just tugs
Official.
the heartstrings.
Very official. In order to obtain alcohol, in other words, religious institutions were required to gain a permit through an admissions process. It went something like this. Only official church leaders could obtain a permit. This would include rabbis, ministers, and priests. Sellers of alcohol, usually wineries, would also need a permit to sell to religious institutions. The act then says that religious heads, bishops, conference heads, whatever, would designate a clergy member to oversee the manufacture of the sacramental wine, and they would need a permit as well. Lots of permits being around. Basically, everyone involved in this process needed a permit approved by the IRS. If anyone, of course, it's the IRS. If anyone was found going against the regulations of the Volstead Act's terms for sacramental wine, they could lose their permit, be fined, or held accountable with criminal penalties depending on the severity of the crime. Quotes, crime. Depends on who you talk to. Anyway, different religions generally had a different set of standards. For example, the Catholic Church used wines for communion, and it can be safe to say that they were allowed more wine than other religions due to their larger congregations, especially at this time. Despite that, the Catholic Church ran a very tight ship, and bootlegging was not as easy to pull off. The Protestant churches were smaller with smaller congregations, so they were allotted less wine than the Catholic churches. It was easier then to take some wine under the table, but I couldn't find anything super significant, probably because they were so small compared to other congregational churches and religions. So, yes, there was probably some bootlegging going on, but because the congregations were so small, it wasn't anything hugely significant, so it's harder to find any historical record of that happening in a Protestant community. In Jewish communities, wine is very important for religious ceremonies. The exemption to the Volstead Act was extended for rabbis and synagogues because of the importance to wine in their religious practices. While Jewish congregations were smaller than Catholic ones, they used wine more frequently, so they were allotted more than the Protestant churches, but maybe a little bit less than the Catholic ones. The extension for rabbis and synagogues, however, was abused by the population to get themselves some wine. Early in Prohibition, especially, people began claiming that they were rabbis from all over the place and from all kinds of different backgrounds. There were black rabbis and women rabbis and Latin rabbis and rabbis from the South and rabbis from the North and rabbis from the East and rabbis from the West. Just so many rabbis. So many. Nobody wanted to argue with anybody who was saying that they were a rabbi because, it's disrespectful and it makes you a jerk, right? So we just have a bunch of rabbis running around. Getting alcohol, it's fine.
So America was Jewish.
And children rabbis
Suddenly,
and rabbit rabbis.
After 1920. Congregation numbers also skyrocketed, with people joining different churches or making up their own to get a little wine for themselves. Congregations, plural, from 1920 to 1921 grew on average from 80 families in a community to like 900. It went like 100-fold. It's crazy. According to IRS records from 1923 and 24, riveting, read it. Great. Millions of gallons of I read it. Riveting. Millions of gallons of alcohol were used under religious permits.
So years are not going to get back.
I committed. Between 23 and 24, millions of gallons of alcohols were used under religious permits. In the 1922 fiscal year, about 2 million gallons were pooled, and in 1924, about 2,944,000 gallons were pooled.
Jeez.
Using these numbers, most historians all agree that this was a massive increase in usage during the early 20s and Prohibition. Well, it sounds crazy. A lot of wineries in the country only survived Prohibition because of the church's religious exemptions and the people willing to abuse the loophole. For example, and I thought this was fascinating, the San Antonio Winery in Los Angeles, if anybody's been there, was opened in 1917, 3 years before Prohibition passed, and it survived because of all of these circumstances. It's still in operation today. Pretty cool.
Dang.
Yeah. So there's your Sacramento wine.
Go Texas.
That's California. That one's in California.
Oh, the San Antonio.
In
sorry.
Los Angeles.
I just read the rest of it. I'm like, oh, San Antonio, go Texas. And then you're like, oh, in LA.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay. All right. We are on the home stretch here. Final chapter for this part. Chapter 12, Bathtub Gin in Ginger Jake. I'm going to start with some definitions. Here we go. Jake.
Oh, great.
You're welcome. Jake. A term used to refer to poisoned alcohol, particularly methanol-laced spirits. What do you think of when you think of moonshine? I usually think of old guys in the Appalachian Mountains with big beer brewing things happening, and they're brewing clear liquor in the woods. That's what I think of. But the official definition of moonshine is actually a lot broader. According to the Oxford Dictionary, it is illicitly distilled or smuggled liquor. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I actually know people that make moonshine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of chemistry involved because if you don't do it right, you will kill your patrons.
Yes.
At least make them go blind.
Yes. That's what this chapter is about.
So it's like moonshiners are actually brilliant distillers.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're not like amateur night and killing people.
Like if they applied themselves in chemistry, they probably would have gotten really far if they did good things with it.
Yeah. They're all like Walter Whites, just out in the woods.
Crazy.
Well, I'm just thinking of people in like jails that make moonshine. Like,
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Do that?
Yeah.
I
So
don't
I
know.
feel like there's prison wallets involved and all sorts of weird crap going on.
I didn't look that deep into it.
It's a fun rabbit hole for sure. I highly suggest looking into it.
For sure. I went the historical route, but if anybody else wants to go the contemporary route, please by all means.
Yeah.
Prohibition in the South, just like other parts of the country, had a very unique flavor to it. While the Northeast had Atlantic City, the West had Seattle bootlegging and the Mexico border, the South had rural moonshiners. Southerners would also get their alcohol from rum runners, especially early on, but it was definitely more expensive than alcohol that was made from home brewers. Homebrewing and moonshine had been around long before Prohibition had started. Many track it back to the 1790s, after the whiskey tax was put into effect in 1791. So by 1920, there were a lot of people who were already making their own liquor. When the Volstead Act passed in 1920, the number of people who decided to make their own moonshine exploded. Went boom. Huge. The process, in a nutshell, goes something like this. And I'm no scientist, I'm no chemist. I literally just read a thing. Corn. Traditionally, other grains are used, but corn was often ground up into a mash, then soaked with yeast, sugar, and hot water to ferment. A still, which is a copper cooking pot thing, was heated up to 175 degrees Fahrenheit, creating steam from the alcohol that would be distilled in a copper pipe above the still, naming original, very good, which would then cool and turn back to a liquid alcohol. It doesn't sound that hard, right? I mean, it's not that bad. Complicated, sure. I don't understand the chemistry behind it, but we'll go with it. Well, if the distilled alcohol was not at the correct temperature when collected for consumption, it would be toxic to anybody who drank it. On top of that, when the moonshine was cooking, the sugar would give off a very sweet smell that Prohibition agents could track when looking for moonshiners in the woods. Once the moonshine was distilled and stored, it would be put into a truck or a car, then transported to different speakeasies. Drivers frequently souped up their engines to make them faster in order to outrun Prohibition agents or police while transporting moonshine or other forms of liquor illegally. This was extremely common throughout the nation, but in the South, they made it a sport. Drivers with redone engines would take their cars out on their downtime and race to see who was the fastest. They would eventually organize and become NASCAR, which still survives to this day. Moonshine, or homemade liquor, would be sold in speakeasies, other bootleggers, or drinking establishments in the area. If it came from an inexperienced moonshiner, though, people would often get sick, and it happened frequently. It happened a lot. The demand for moonshine became so high that moonshiners would often cut corners to try and speed up the process to keep up with the demand. Because of this, the quality of the liquor went down, and the potential of toxic alcohol went up. This was a problem. Moonshiners would try to keep up with the demand by turning the temperature they cooked up. And when they cooked the mixture, they would often try to add industrial alcohol, even more questionable ingredients. That includes additional methanol and even a small doses that could lead to blindness or death. Some moonshiners would make their moonshine in car radiators, which I thought was kind of interesting, leading to lead poisoning. That's always a good time. We have an episode on that, so you're welcome. Go ahead and listen to that guy.
So let me elaborate on this if I can. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So you take a loaf of bread, right? When you cut a loaf of bread in half and you look at all the little pockets inside of it, that is caused from the fermentation process. That's where we get bread from. That's called the crumb. Basically, if you take yeast and you mix it with sugar of some sort and any sort of flour, because flour is a sugar, and water, it produces CO2, so carbon dioxide. So that's what it farts out. We have a whole episode on the sketchy ways that Britain made bread in the early 1800s, going all the way into the 1900s. We'll link to that in the show notes. But like yeast, water, and sugar make CO2 and alcohol. So it farts out CO2 and it poops out alcohol. And there are ways to regulate that. There's so let's say you let this ferment for a long period of time and then you heat that solution up. Now, alcohol has a way lower vapor point than water. So if you heat that up to say 175 degrees and then you let those vapors go through a copper tube, usually in a spiral, and it will get cooler and cooler and cooler, and then it will turn into a liquid, and then it will drip into another container. That is what distillation is. Now, that if you can keep it at 175 degrees, then you know for sure what is coming out the other end is pure 100% ethanol. You can run your car off of this stuff. Now, if that fire is too hot, you're going to be mixing a lot of water vapor in with it, along with the alcohol. And unless you have what is known as a hydrometer, meaning it's a tool that measures buoyancy and temperature. If you don't have one of those devices that can measure the proper alcohol level, what you're spitting out, you have no idea how much alcohol it has. So if you were to go to the grocery store and just pick up a bottle of rubbing alcohol and just down it, it will kill you.
Right.
But yet you can pick up a bottle of Jack Daniels, which is 40% alcohol, down that thing, and you're just going to get trashed for the night, and that's it. So if you don't have a way of measuring how much alcohol or ethanol that you're producing, you run the risk of killing people. And usually one of the first signs of absolute acute alcohol poisoning is blindness. So that was the problem with these moonshiners, is that they were producing stuff that was so potent and so powerful, but so unregulated and so misinformed that whoever drank it, you just had no idea how strong it was, especially when they mix it with other things like coffee and whatnot. That's where you get Kahlua from. Yeah, people were dying from alcohol poisoning from one single drink.
Yes, and it gets worse.
Yes.
I'll tell you how.
All right, I'm all for it.
All right. It's 1923. A 34-year-old speakeasy owner in a suburb of Chicago named Mary Wozniak was serving guests shots, beer, and whatever alcohol she had in stock that night. So good alcohol, the real McCoy, was becoming increasingly expensive. And with 3 kids to feed, she had to find alcohol from local moonshiners to supplement her stock, as it was far cheaper, especially for a black market hot topic item. One man named George Renton drank 5 to 6 shots of the local moonshine, though she probably didn't tell where she got it. Renton staggered out of her bar that night and walked about 200 feet out of the door, and he suddenly fell into the street, dead on the floor. An autopsy later revealed that Renton had a lethal amount of methanol, or wood alcohol, in his system, and it killed him.
Jeez.
So whose fault was it? Was it Mary's fault? She certainly paid for it. She would be arrested and convicted of manslaughter by poisoning with 1 year to life in prison. Mary would become known by the public, thanks to the press, as Moonshine Mary, and the first woman to be arrested for bootlegging.
Dang.
When Prohibition went into effect in 1920, industrial alcohol manufacturing and selling was made exempt. The U.S. government often added substances to industrial alcohol to ensure that it was not something people would want to drink. This practice was originally put into place before Prohibition due to tax evasion concerns. They denatured the alcohol by creating methanol or wood alcohol, and it was generally alcohol made from a grain base and cooked at a different temperature than ethanol or the alcohol that was safer to drink. The government also added additional chemicals on top of that made the industrial alcohol smell or taste unappealing to keep people from drinking it. At least that was their goal. When Prohibition began, bootleggers would redistill industrial alcohol to attempt to burn off the additional chemicals. To combat this, the government created a new formula in 1926, essentially increasing the amount of methanol in the industrial stuff to make it harder to renature. According to the January 10th, 1927 edition of Time magazine, the formula was 4 parts methanol, or wood alcohol, 2.25 parts pyridine basis, half part benzene to 100 parts ethyl alcohol. The same
Jeez.
article noted that 3 regular glasses or drinks of this form of alcohol would cause blindness instantly. Those who drank poison alcohol would show different symptoms depending on how much wood alcohol was in the glass that they drank. Some suffered severe abdominal pain. Some just got a headache. Some would feel numbness in their legs, losing the ability to walk normally. Others just straight up died. Crazy. When the government began to put this new formula into place, some argued against it, noting the dangers that it could pose for people who drank it willingly or unknowingly. Others, including members of the Anti-Saloon League and our friend Wayne Wheeler, were incredibly supportive of the change. Poison alcohol or the increased amount of wood alcohol would become a growing problem throughout the entirety of Prohibition. By the time Prohibition ended, it was estimated that more than 50,000 Americans were reported dead by alcohol poisoning.
Jeez.
Bootleggers, trying to keep up with the demand, would continue to attempt renaturing the industrial alcohol despite the new formula, essentially doubling the amount of wood alcohol. They would also relabel, repackage, or dilute the industrial alcohol and try to pass it off as drinkable versions to various speakeasies across the country. Some people blamed the government, some blamed the bootleggers, and some blamed the drinkers for the responsibility of people dropping dead after drinking poison alcohol. Wayne Wheeler blamed the bootleggers and the drinkers, and the bootleggers blamed the government. It was a whole thing throughout the entire period. In 1928, 2 brothers from Boston named Harry Gross and Max Reisman began creating their own version of a popular medication at the time called Jamaican ginger. And this was also called Ginger Jake, which was used for stomach problems normally. This medication, which had been around since the 1860s, contained 70 to 80% alcohol, basically.
Whoa.
Goodness.
That's like Everclear. Like,
it's crazy. So these 2 bootleggers.
The sound of that makes my body hurt.
Awful.
yep, right?
Ugh. These 2 bootleggers made their version of the technically legal drink, using an industrial alcohol to replicate Ginger Jake without the strong ginger taste. To do that, they used Lindol, a chemical normally used to make celluloid film and explosives.
God.
The Lindol-laced
the
alcohol.
Boston molasses flood.
Yes.
Jeez.
The Lindol-laced alcohol would be circulated throughout the country out to the public. Is that it caused between 1929 and 1930. So it was circulated between 29 and 30. What they didn't know is that they released their new product out to the public and it caused severe paralysis, particularly in the legs. Oh. An estimated 35,000 to 100,000 people suffered that paralysis and developed a limp that would be known as Jake Walk or Jake Leg. The 2 brothers were eventually found and convicted of taking medication. People would be seen for some years following the incident with a limp in their step. In fact, I'm going to end it with some lyrics from a song by our friend Woody Guthrie. I think I mentioned Guthrie in our Dust Bowl episode. He's famous for his Dust Bowl songs. So I'm going to read his lyrics here.
Woody Guthrie.
Yeah, Guthrie.
Good old Woody Guthrie. Yep. He wrote a song called
Bob
Jake
Dylan's
Walk.
main inspiration.
Yeah. His song Jake Walk Blues. It goes something like this. I might drink liquor and I might drink rum. Might drink lemonade and buttermilk some. But here's my drink, which I always choose. I'm a Jake Walk daddy with the Jake Walk blues. I got me a mama down in New Orleans. She's long and tall. She's keen, I mean. I lost my woman. I'm a singing the blues. I'm a Jake Walk daddy with the Jake Walk blues. And then it goes on, and it's really interesting. The last lyric is, down in Texas, there is a moonshine Jamaica ginger make you paralyzed. I won't let that trouble my mind. I'm a Jake Walk daddy with the Jake Walk blues. If you don't want me, give me your left hand. Gonna take a jug to my burying land. Legs are stiff like a new pair of shoes. I'm a Jake Walk daddy with the Jake Walk blues. That just proves that everybody knew about it. It was in the mainstream. It's a whole thing. And there you are, friends, all of the ways that you can get alcohol during Prohibition.
It's amazing how it's no different today.
Today you see a lot of the echoes of Prohibition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating how the more we try to restrict stuff, the more creative ways that people find workarounds.
Yeah.
And when we'll look at the Jake Walk Blues by Woody Guthrie, again, you can't separate the literature from the culture. Something written like that in the 1700s wouldn't work.
No.
But given the 1920s, 1930s of it all, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so there you have it, guys. There's part 2, the source. Next
Nice.
one, we're going to be talking about my favorite topic on Prohibition: culture, speakeasies, women's right, Black culture, Harmon Renaissance, jazz, other things. I'm excited for this next one.
Are we getting into the mob at all?
We're going to get to the mob in the episode after that.
Oh my God, there's two more?
So culture and then the mob.
Ugh.
Ooh.
That's how we're going to do it.
Full party.
For Pata.
Man. Because
Nice.
I really want to get to Al Capone, because I actually stood in his cell in Alcatraz.
So have I. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yep. We're going to get to that. Not this next episode, but the last episode. Partially because I'm leaving it for the end, but also partially because it happens at the end of Prohibition.
Yeah, that's true too. Like all the mob stuff kind of came to an end when Prohibition was lifted.
It was most active at the end of the 20s and the early 30s.
Yeah.
At its peak.
Yep. And then the mob had to shift to other things like casinos and whatnot, which is something that I may explore, like the Tangiers
and
the Flamingo.
I do recommend checking out the Mob Museum in Las Vegas. That's fascinating. And they do a really good job with their Prohibition expedition. And they have a good speakeasy. I went there.
You remember it?
Yeah. I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
I only had like 2 cocktails and I tasted some of my husband's. That was it. But they did
next thing you know, you're dressed up as Cher and your husband is Elvis. And
no. Anyway, speakeasies, culture, all the fun stuff that I love. Next episode.
Dang.
I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was good.
And I think, Kara, you've exceeded even my time frame for an episode.
No, I think the record is like 2.5 hours.
I'm trying to think what episode that is, but I
we'll have to look, but I'm pretty sure it's that one.
He's like, oh wait.
You had to think about it. He's like, wait. Like,
yeah, because I'm working on an episode of the most supreme dumpster fire of all of humanity. This is a dumpster fire that will end Earth. And
I might have to skip out on that. You're going to put me in an anxiety attack.
Well, thankfully, it's not going to happen for a couple billion years.
Okay, good.
But I think
Past
it's
my lifetime.
Yeah. Like we're totally fine. But it's one of these
to think about.
Yes, it's one of those dumpster fires where it's like, dang, our sun is going to explode and it's going to rock every single inner solar system planet.
Okay.
So it is a dumpster fire completely out of the realm of human involvement, but I think it's kind of interesting. It's a little sciencey. I like doing sciencey things. It's going to involve some nuclear chemistry.
Great.
I can tell you two are just thrilled about this.
It's also really late at night and we're ready for bed.
Yes. Yeah. It's only 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. And I also know that Deja's got an episode coming up as well.
That's true. Yeah. Mine won't come until like December by the time you guys get done with your
Kara
stuff.
won't be done until December.
I'll still be talking about the 1920s.
Prohibition episode 33. Let's go.
Honestly, with all these stories I could, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You could keep going forever.
I could.
You could have a whole separate podcast on the Prohibition.
Talk about Prohibition, baseball.
Drink and talk about the Prohibition.
All the things. Anyway, drinking. All right. Well, let's end it, shall we?
Yeah. So guys, be sure to check us out on Instagram. One of us is going to update our Instagram page.
We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there.
And one of us is going to update our website.
Yeah, I'll get there. Once I'm done writing all of my freaking notes.
But yeah, check us out.
Pages.
Check us out on the daydumpsterfire.com. You can find us anywhere. Be sure to tell friends and family. The best thing to do is just grab their phones and just start like following us, whether they like it or not. it's one of these things where the more you learn about how humanity has tried to solve like every problem and then blown up in their faces, it kind of helps you out a little bit because it's okay for things not to go right. So yeah, be sure to check us out anywhere. Be sure to tell friends and family. I encourage you to like pick 3 people, hijack them, tie them up consentfully tie them up if they're into that sort of thing, and ball gags. Hey man, that's up to you. That's up to you and the consenting person. But ultimately at the end of the day, try to get them to find a better place in their life that revolves around other people screwing crap up unbelievably so that they can feel better about themselves. So yeah, check us out, daysofsfire.com. We're on Instagram. I'm trying to think, are we on Facebook? No, we're not on Facebook.
No, sir.
Yeah, I'm not even on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook is like so 2007. But yeah, reach out to friends and family, like and subscribe, leave a comment. You can also send us a text message via the link on our website. And stay
We'll
put.
see you guys later.
Yeah, stay put for part 38 of Prohibition and keep it a hot mess.
Bye.
See you later, guys.
See ya.
Bye.